Okay, so picture this. For a full 72 hours at the end of August, the most accessible president in modern history just vanished from public view. I mean, no press conferences, no events, nothing. Just radio silence from the White House. So let's dive into how 3 quiet days managed to ignite an absolute political firestorm online.
And this wasn't just some quiet question being whispered in the halls of Washington. Oh no, it completely exploded online. "Where is Donald Trump?" started trending everywhere on X. And as you're about to see, the speculation it kicked off went to some pretty dark places, and it happened fast.
To really get why this silence was so, deafening, you have to look at his usual schedule. Just in August 2025, President Trump had 26 public engagements. 26. He was a constant presence. From these really long cabinet meetings to always talking with the press, the man was, for all intents and purposes, everywhere.
And then he wasn't. Just like that. After this marathon 3-hour cabinet meeting where he took questions on, everything from global politics to Taylor Swift's engagement, the whole public schedule just stopped, wiped totally clean.
Look, one day with no events might be normal. 2 days, that's kind of unusual. But by the time Friday rolled around, 3 whole weekdays had gone by with 0 public appearances for a president this visible. And that created a vacuum. And as we all know, the internet absolutely hates a vacuum.
So, with no official word coming out besides some vague talk about standard policy and staff meetings, the online world started to write its own story. And let me tell you, this story took a really dramatic and frankly pretty morbid turn.
The whole narrative just escalated with shocking speed. By Saturday morning, the top searches on Google weren't just about where he was anymore. No, the speculation, with absolutely no evidence, had jumped to some wild conclusions about his very survival.
And then you've got Vice President J.D. Vance, who kind of added fuel to this fire. Now, he did say he believed Trump was in incredibly good health, but he also mentioned being prepared for a terrible tragedy. Well, you can imagine. That little soundbite got clipped and shared everywhere, just fanning the flames of conspiracy.
But then, a voice of reason sort of cut through all that noise. While the internet was losing its mind with all these rumors, it turns out Trump had actually done an hour-long interview. A Daily Caller correspondent, Reagan Reese, posted this on social media, a direct takedown of all the wild conjecture.
And just like that, the entire thing just collapsed. On Saturday morning, all the speculation came to a really sudden and, honestly, a very boring end. The answer to that huge trending question, where is Donald Trump? Well, it turned out to be pretty simple. He was at the White House, and he was just on his way out for the day. Pool reporters saw him getting into his motorcade right there on the South Lawn. And there you have it. The grim online firestorm was put out by a perfectly normal Saturday. The guy at the center of it all was simply heading to his golf course in Virginia, wearing his usual weekend stuff, with his grandkids, Kai and Spencer, right there with him. So, this brings us to the really important question. Why did this even happen? How did a few quiet days spiral so completely out of control? To understand that, we've got to look at the bigger picture surrounding the president's health. This reaction didn't just come from nowhere. At 79, Trump is the oldest president in U.S. history. And this is all happening right after a campaign where his opponent's fitness for office was a huge issue. So public sensitivity about a president's health is at an all-time high right now. And that sensitivity was already dialed up because of these little, visible health stories that were floating around before the 72-hour absence. For instance, pictures of a bruised hand were explained away as just irritation from shaking a lot of hands. Then, photos of swollen ankles got connected to a medical diagnosis that had just been announced. And that diagnosis was something called chronic venous insufficiency, which the White House physician had announced just last month. It's basically a condition where the veins in your legs have a tough time sending blood back up to the heart. It was these little, concrete health details that created the perfect fertile ground for all those rumors to grow.
You also have to think about how a president's own habits can shape what we expect. During his first term, Trump would regularly take these long August vacations. We're talking 2 full weeks sometimes. This time around, though, he's mostly been sticking around Washington. So a short 3-day break from the public eye suddenly feels way more significant than a 2-week vacation ever did.
So it all kind of leaves us with this final big question. When the public expects 24/7 access and total transparency, what does it even mean for a president to have a few days off the grid?
I think this whole episode shows us that in the absence of information, we don't just wait, we speculate. And sometimes that speculation can create a story that is way more dramatic than the truth.